Good morning, everyone. Please check the city website for additional meeting detail information. Meetings can be viewed via live streaming on YouTube and the city website. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lupaneewak, and the Adawandran. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work, and live in this territory. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cwc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Moving on to the agenda. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. Moving on to consent items, I will be pulling 2.1 and 2.2, which will go to the scheduled items. 2.2 will be a public participation meeting. And with that, we have consent items 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. Looking for a motion. Councillor Frank, and welcome, Mr. Mayor, will be seconding. And with that, any questions from committee members on any of these items? That is 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. Councillor Purvill.
Thank you, Through the Chair, to the staff. Regarding the 2.3, the environmental assessment study, it states, based on the council approval, 30-day review period. What will be the timeline afterwards, after this initial period? Thank you.
Mr. McCrae.
Thank you, through the chair. The 30-day review period is a stipulated part of the environmental assessment process. It's the sort of the final public consultation part of that process. So after receiving comments during the 30-day review period, the team will finalize and then embark on the design phase. And then in the design phase, there will be additional public consultation opportunities.
Councillor.
Thank you. And to follow up, according to the projections, there will be $18.7 million currently. That's what it states there. So if this goes ahead, when this investment would be made, and when it would be made, has it been already projected, or would it be in this multi-year budget or the future? Thank you.
Through the chair, the cost of those two phases of the project are in the budget. It's in the growth budget. It's has a component of development charge funding. So the plan currently is to implement the first phase in 2026, and the funds are available for that.
So just to make sure, it is included in this multi-year budget because it's 2026 and the entire amount is budgeted in it for the phases, because I understand the 18.7 should be for all phases if approved, correct?
To Mr. McCrae, looking at making sure we have enough money in our budget for all of the projects, Councillor? I just want to give clarification.
Not all the projects, this one project, this all phases.
All phases.
Yeah, through the chair, the total of both phases is $29.8 million. The phase that is within the current MYB, you are correct, it is currently estimated at 18.7. That dollar value will be refined during the design phase, but our current information that there's sufficient funds in the budget to deliver the project.
Councillor?
Thank you. No more questions on this point.
Any other questions from committee members on any of the consent items? Councillor Preble.
Thank you. And I have a question regarding the 2.5, which is a project in my ward, which I'm very excited about. And I just wanted to ask a question because in this project, in the Appendix A, there's a financial projection. And this year, we are going to be finishing the part from Doon to Adelaide. And so do I understand right that this one is really only looking into from the Adelaide going south past the bridge and connecting to TVP? And if this amount is including both Doon to Adelaide and Adelaide to the bridge, or if this is just really the future one from Adelaide Windermere to the bridge? Thank you.
Mr. Dales?
Thank you. Through the chair, so the current report relates to the entire project limits for providing consulting services during construction.
Thank you to follow up. So the 1.249 million would be including project for this year and also for the entire project. I just want to make sure, and it is, of course, it's budgeted as it shows in the source of funding. So I just want to make sure it's for entire project. Thank you.
Through the chair, so yes, the report speaks specifically to the consultant work for providing construction oversight, and that is for the entire project, which will include work this year and into next year as well.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last question, follow up. The 1.249, I do understand that this one is talking about the engineering, the project. I do understand, which is 54,000. But the 1.249 million, the entire project, including the engineering, including the work, should be within this amount, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from committee on the consent items? I would like to make a quick comment from the chair regarding the 2.3, which is the Oxford Street West improvements on the master EA study. This is in my ward. Very pleased to see this coming forward, and even more pleased to know that it's going to be starting in 2026. And really appreciate the work and time that went into this. We had a number of public engagement sessions throughout the past couple years. And I'm really pleased to see the bridge not having to be redone. We can accommodate a number of improvements while maintaining the bridge. I remember when this was put in a number of years ago, and it was quite a conversation. I cannot imagine not having this extension to the west end, but it was considered quite a project building this bridge, and I'm really pleased at that time we built it for expanding it right now. So I just wanted to make these comments. Thank you to staff. I know there's still more work to be done. I know there will be notices sent out as we go through preparing for the construction, and as we all know, construction projects always do take a toll on how we move, and I would really encourage staff to keep those conversations going with the notices and letting the community know that we are just about going forward with these improvements. So with that, I think we should proceed to vote.
Counselor Purple,
Voting yes.
closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Moving on to scheduled items, we have 2.1, which is the 8th report of the Integrated Transportation Community Advisory Committee. Report. Just one moment. Sorry, before we get to 2.1, we should do 2.2, which is the public participation meeting for Johnson Gow Municipal Drain Extension. I would like to open up the public participation meeting and looking for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Ferreira, seconded by Councillor Trousseau.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
And I'd like to go to the gallery if there's anyone here that would like to speak to this item. You could come forward to the mics. And you're able, is there anyone here that would like to speak to this item? I see none. You are able to make comments up to 5 minutes. I see none, so with that, I'd like to close the public participation meeting. Councillor Frank?
Thank you. Quick question. I'm just wondering, was this circulated to the public as a public participation meeting? Because I don't see it in the report. So I'm just curious if this was processed in the same way as our usual PPMs.
I'd like to go to staff.
Thank you, through the chair. So this process is underneath the Municipal Drainage Act, so it's a little bit different. So this work is done at the request and the cost of the property owners that the drain services. So the Drainage Act requires us only to notify those properties owners. So they were given notice and a time period that they could provide comments within. We did not receive any. Generally, this work, because it is initiated by property owners, usually goes on without comment. So it's not quite the same as our typical PPM and requirements.
And with that, I am looking for a motion to close the public participation meeting. Councillor Pibble, seconded by Councillor Frank. You can proceed to vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0.
And with that, I'd like to start off with if there's a motion to adopt and introduce the authorization and the construction of the drain project. It being noted that there will be a third reading at a later date. With the bylaw, we just do the 2 readings. Councillor Frank and Mayor Morgan as seconder. Any questions? Councillor Pibble.
Thank you. Thank you, and through the chair to the staff. I do have a question on this one because in these recommendations, we are approving the bylaw and there are no financials stated there. Then the bylaw states that actually financials we are approving. Then there's a specific consultant financials. Then we have the construction, a public tender for these works will be issued and construction undertaken. I just want to have the understanding of this one. So we are approving the bylaw, the motion. which doesn't include the financials, but the bylaw does. So this one is kind of different than the ones previous, so if you could explain that one to me, thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, so the reason there are financials but no source of financing, for example, is this is not actually paid by the municipality. So what this work does is it allows us to tender the work, and there is an assessment done to each of the property owners for their share of the cost, and that's what the bylaw sets out.
Counselor?
So for the portion of the city, because it's not paid 100% by those landowners, there is a share of the city as well. It is 100%. Okay, so I did get the nod, so that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from committee members? I see none. We can proceed to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Our next scheduled item is 2.1, which is, our next item is 2.1, which is the 8th report of the Integrated Transportation Community Advisory Committee. I would like to maybe ask our vice chair if he could take over, as I'd like to make a few comments.
Yes, thank you very much. I will do that and recognize Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trousseau. I would like to make a few comments here and looking forward to a conversation here at committee regarding the 8th report, in particular as it relates to 4.4, which is the Road Safety Subcommittee. We are requesting, or the advisory group is requesting, to direct Civic admin and the London Transit Commission to prepare a business case on the priority basis. I understand that that is already going forward, but I would like to make an amendment to this to request that we just receive this portion. I do feel that when it comes to advisory groups giving direction and council supporting that on to administration, I think we have to be a little bit careful. So I do have an amendment to that, and well, I'd like to put that motion on the floor.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Councillor Preble?
I certainly support this, and I just wanted to add that both 4.1 and 4.4, the ITCAC, I attended this meeting and sent this information to LTC. LTC responded to both points. So actually, they have been already addressed. And if there is any additional follow-up from ATCAC, they are more than welcome. They are more than welcome to come back to us. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mayor Morgan?
Yes, I'll just add a comment to this. So I appreciate Councillor Hopkins' direction on this. It is a redundant request from an advisory committee and unnecessary. As I'm sure everybody knows, as soon as, well, first off, FCM, as well as a number of municipalities, aggressively lobbied for a permanent transit fund. It's something that's been in the works for some time. It's something that the government has committed to. And of course, then we lobbied for them to open the intake and process the funds faster. The municipality has been in discussions directly with the Transit Commission about ensuring that we are as prepared as we possibly can to be very aggressive in our application quickly into the fund, because we know these funds are often oversubscribed. So although I appreciate the suggestion from the advisory committee, There is a level of trust of the municipal government here that I think needs to be taken, that when there are significant funding programs that are going to be critical to the municipality, that we are on that from both a staff, an LTC, and a government relations perspective. So I support the way that Councillor Hopkins is going. I'm not sure this is necessary for an advisory committee to give a suggestion on. I think receiving this part and then just accepting the rest of the report is appropriate.
If there are no other, oh, Councillor Hopkins, did you want to speak again? Anybody else? I will turn the chair back to Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trussell. And with that, there is a motion. We can proceed to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
And with we move on to items for direction 4.1, which is Councillor Frank planned Green Municipal Fund project applications in the next 12 to 24 months request. There is a motion. Looking to Councillor Frank.
Yes, thank you. Would you like me to move the motion with the updated language and then speak to it?
I think with the updated language, yes.
Excellent. So I didn't see an e-scribe, so I'm not sure if it's just maybe hopping in now, but I'll read it out. The communication dated July 11th, 2024 from Councillor Frank with respect to request to report back at a future meeting of Civic Works Committee regarding the planned Green Municipal Fund project applications in the next 12 to 24 months be referred to SPPC to be brought forward with a future 2024 Climate Emergency Action Plan update, it being noted with communication from C. Butler was received. So simply shifting, since we get the Climate Emergency Action Plan updates at SPPC, shifting it to that committee and aligning it with the regular reports as opposed to a separate report.
Thank you for that. Any questions from committee members? Oh, I am looking for a seconder in Mayor Morgan. Thank you. Any questions, comments? No?
Can I speak to it now?
You can speak to it, yes. Before you do, I would just like to ask staff any concerns with the amended motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No concerns with the amended motion. We will do our best to align whatever projects we are looking to seek funding through these funds and provide that information with our report late January, early February of next year.
Councillor Frank.
Thank you, yes, and I just wanted to briefly explain the rationale behind this. As we know, there are many projects in the Climate Emergency Action Plan, I think over 200 different actions, very ambitious, and just getting a better understanding from both council and the community's perspective of what the major projects will be that we're looking at, and understanding that the Green Municipal Fund has a lot of different funding opportunities. They've revamped their funding structure, so that might have either made more funding available or made some less attractive, but having a clear understanding of what those projects will be, and then being able to understand in the next 12 to 24 months before the end of our term what projects are being prioritized by staff. So simply seeking that information and hoping that it aligns with some of the prioritization work that staff are doing for the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. Mayor Morgan.
Yes, so I support this direction. I'll just also note that as now as the chair of the Big City Mayors federally, I also sit on the FCM executive, which is the decision-making body for Green Municipal Fund projects. So I'll be required to declare a conflict on any projects that London submits at that level, but I'm fully able to participate in our discussions and forwarding projects here. I think this is an astute alignment of different reporting structures and ensuring that as there is money out there to go after, that we go after it aggressively.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan, for those comments. And with that, we can proceed to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Moving on to our second item for direction, 4.2, which is from Councillor McAllister, as update to the Hamilton Road Streetscape Master Plan. There is a motion in front of us. There is added communication just to make the committee members aware. I'm looking for a motion to start the conversation, Councillor Trudeau, and looking for a seconder. Councillor Frank. And with that, I see Councillor McAllister here. Welcome to Civic Works Committee. If you could speak to your motion.
Yes, and thank you through the chair. Appreciate being a visitor at this committee. I was previously on this committee, and I know you do a lot of interesting work, so thanks for letting me be here today. So really, my intention behind this, this is an issue I hear daily, weekly, monthly, traffic safety concerns on Hamilton Road. We actually held a dedicated town hall to this topic last year. It is something I hear frequently. I know there's a lot of community concerns, not just from people who live in that immediate area, but people who utilize that as an east-west corridor. There's a lot of folks who take Hamilton, Horton, Springbank. So in terms of getting right across the length of the city, it's a road that's well utilized. And I hear a lot of different opinions on this. And really, this is coming out of conversations with staff. And I want to say thank you, first of all, to Mr. McRae and your team in terms of working with me to address some of those concerns. When we had the town hall, we were able to get some really good feedback in terms of, the lines being improved, the lighting at above standard illumination to make it brighter in the area, the red light camera. These are all great additions, but in the course of those conversations, those are things that we could do to work within the existing infrastructure that we have. And really, I see this as looking at the bigger picture in terms of a redesign potentially of the road. And I know I've had a lot of discussions in the last few days in terms of people's opinions in terms of a 3-lane. But as I mentioned in the motion, this is including but not limited to, because really I want to give staff the opportunity to look at a potential redesign, what that could entail. It could be larger, it could be smaller, I don't know. And really this comes down to me needing that information and us as a council being able to look into this to see what could be done. It's a road that we've worked with for many years. Some of these plans date back last century in terms of how it was aligned. I think it's a road that needs more attention. We have put in work in the last little while to improve it, but again, that's how it exists currently. We haven't necessarily looked at what could be done to improve the safety for everyone, because this is, again, it's not just drivers. I hear this from pedestrians, from cyclists. There are a lot of concerns in terms of the traffic safety for all involved. And really, I think this is important to have this conversation, first at committee and then council. I want to hear what my colleagues have to say, but I am expressing a concern that I hear all the time from my constituents and from Londoners who use this road. As I said, it is a main east-west corridor. I do believe it needs more attention, and I think we should seriously contemplate updating this streetscape plan, because as staff had indicated, this is the next step in terms of us looking at that bigger picture and potentially doing redesign on that road. So I'm going to leave my comments there for now. I've kind of more broadly expressed what I hear. I'm happy to listen to what my colleagues have to say and respond to any questions, and I'm sure staff can as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Looking to committee members for comments on the motion. Mayor Morgan.
Thank you. Let me start off by saying, having been a ward councillor, I very much appreciate the work that Councillor McAllister has done to advocate for his ward on this and a number of other projects. And I also appreciate that he had a public meeting and staff worked with him on a number of suggested improvements for safety along the corridor and in the area. I will, though, with respect, express a concern with the councillor's motion. And it has to do with a couple of parts. One is the master mobility plan. And although I appreciate what the councillor just said, what the motion says is that staff be directed to include, as part of the master mobility plan, including, but not limited to, so including 3-lane configuration, protected bike lanes, accessible sidewalks. And it is not my desire to get ahead of the mass mobility plan process, to allow that work to continue from a staff and technical basis to provide suggestions through the mass mobility plan, which work for not just this part of the city, but all parts of the city for all modes of transportation. And so I'm resistant myself and will be voting against this part of the motion to presuppose or include in the master mobility plan components that have not been assessed. The other piece too is to, when we complete the master mobility plan, and we talked about the Canada Public Transit Fund, as well as our own DCs and capital plan projects that we have. There's going to be many things that we're probably, well, there's going to be many things that we will need to fund from the mass mobility plan and find a way to do that. And so I'm also hesitant to provide the direction to suggest things in the multi-year budget cycle for 2028 to 2031 until we look at the full suite of mass mobility plan projects, put them in the proper funding envelopes, and then consider them in a prioritization, because we may not be able to do them all. And where this falls in a prioritization, I'm not sure, but I'm not interested in getting ahead of those pieces. And again, Councillor McAllister is a ward councillor. I think he should be advocating for his ward. When I was a ward councillor, I'd certainly be advocating for mine. But now as mayor, I kind of have to take a bigger picture and look at the city as a whole. And I also don't want to get into the position of each and every ward councillor across the city coming forward with a couple of transportation projects to be considered in the mass mobility plan process without the master mobility plan process concluding based on all the public feedback, technical analysis, and the work that staff have been doing. So again, and I say this with respect to Councillor McAllister, I think your advocacy for your ward is admirable. This is not something that I could possibly support at this time because of the reasons that I've suggested today. I'm not saying that this isn't a possible solution in the future. It's just not something that we presuppose in the master mobility plan process or the prioritization of funding coming out of the master mobility plan process, in my opinion.
Councillor Trousseau.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, and first to the ward councillor, thank you very much for doing this. I know what it's like to be getting a lot of pressure from constituents about particular problems in your ward. The reason why I'm supporting this, the reason why I'm supporting this, and the reason why I actually wanted to take the additional step of moving it, and I want to take the additional step of responding to the mayor's very, very careful and reasonable concerns about this. This is not just a ward issue. This is a major thoroughfare that I'm not sure it was designed to be a major thoroughfare, but here it is. It's a major thoroughfare. It's also the front of a BIA. It's the center part of several neighborhoods that go through there. And one of the things that really bothers me about the configuration whenever I go up that road, which in all due respect to ward council, I do try to avoid, because it's very perilous, and especially if a car is parked. We need to do something to change this. I think it's a citywide problem. It's very close to downtown, especially the segment between Adelaide and Highbury. We've seen too many instances of collisions, injuries in this segment, and I think if we're going to take the reduction of deaths and serious calamities seriously, we need to push this ahead. In terms of it competing with the other areas in the master mobility plan, I would just say good for the ward councillor. Maybe some more of us should be coming up with these and putting them on the table. I read this and I said, oh, wait a minute. I still have a few things to say about Oxford that's out there, but I want to commend the ward councillor for doing this, and I think it's in the interest of the entire city. Finally, in terms of the funding, this does not push this particular project ahead of any other projects when we go to evaluate them. and maybe some other ones will come forward. So I really appreciate the concerns that the mayor is raising, but I am going to continue to support this because I don't think we're committing ourselves to do anything in the end besides look at it and recognize that it's a bigger problem, which I think it is. So thank you very much.
And just before I go to other committee members, I would like to go to staff. And if you could just take us through the process of what this motion is directing us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly the moving councillor may wish to correct me if I've got this incorrect. So this motion would require the Mobility Master Plan to identify the need for a future corridor study on Hamilton Road as one of the outcomes. The MMP is the view from 50,000 feet, so it won't be doing this actual work. This would simply recommend that that study happen at some point after the conclusion of the MMP. That is not funded at this time, so we would be seeking funding to do that work in the context of all the other priorities of the MMP next year at its conclusion. The earliest the study could proceed would be 2026, which would allow implementation after that, assuming, of course, council both approves this motion, and then when the MMP is considered, then continues to prioritize this study versus the many other outcomes of the MMP. Is that the information you're looking for, Madam Chair?
Yes, I am, and if I can just follow up with a couple questions then. So this is the funding to identify or do a study to see if this streetscape, to improve the streetscape master plan or to look at alternatives. So the funding would come through as a business case in 2026. I just want to understand, because there's no money for this to be done right now.
Madam Chair, so because this is tied to the conclusion of the Mobility Master Plan, and I would suggest that if this is approved, business cases for recommendations out of the master plan would be prepared as either budget amendments in next summer for the 2026 budget, or they could also, and more likely for many of them, be part of the next multi-year budget. So the earliest amendment where funding would be sought would be this time next year for the 2026 budget year.
And just to clarify, this is a study to identify what work needs to be done in this area alone.
Madam Chair, we certainly have heard the need for a functional corridor study on Hamilton Road to ensure its future function for all modes as part of the MMP. We are not at a point to make that recommendation, but yes, this would have to be a study to presuppose the outcome of a functional corridor study without having collision locations, geometry, public consultation, traffic volumes would be irresponsible on our part.
Thank you for that. And any other questions, comments? Councillor Frank.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm not sure if this is to the councillor or towards staff, but I did have a question. I'm just wondering how this is materially different than the request that we had for the Oxford Wonderland review being included in the master mobility plan that was approved by council, and I think that Councillor Lehman and Rahman were championing that. So I see this as similar, but I'm not sure what is the difference between that motion and this one, other than the location and like specific layout descriptions.
Ms. Chair.
Madam Chair, the Mobility Master Plan has included a review of the Wonderland Corridor since prior to starting the Mobility Master Plan, and that was a decision that was made when the the 6-laning project was postponed or put on hiatus as a result of the Climate Emergency Action Plan. As growth has happened in that area, we will be looking at that network at a high level, and that is what MMPs do. So that work will occur as part of the MMP. Corridor studies that would decide sidewalk widths, the configuration of a bike lane, the presence of left turn lanes, traffic calming measures are not MMP type work. So there's two parts that's what's happening at Oxford and Wonderland. One is MMP, and it's around the volume and the network. The other piece will be within neighborhood, and that is a separate study being done in conjunction with one of the developers as a traffic impact study.
Councillor?
So then for clarity, the reason why this one is considered different than the other one is because there were specific descriptions of a 3-lane road with protected bike lanes and the sidewalks. If that was removed, then this would be similar to the Oxford and Wonderland motion?
Madam Chair, I would not see it as the same as the Oxford Wonderland Network evaluation. We are not looking to manage capacity in this location to address future growth. We are looking at how the corridor currently functions with respect to all road users. It really is more of a corridor study versus an MMP future planning study. And we do corridor studies throughout the city external to the MMP all the time. That really is the appropriate place. This is recommending that we identify the need for that corridor study in the MMP, which in my mind, yes, is likely appropriate, although we haven't finished the MMP, so we don't know which other priorities for similar corridor studies would be included in the MMP. We'll have to have that conversation, I believe, at council as to whether this would be a #1 priority should this pass, or if there might be other ones that are of more interest to proceed with more quickly.
Councillor?
I'm fine to hear from the ward councillor, saw his hand just go up.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, through the chair. So I just want to address a few things that kind of have been said. And just to the point in terms of prioritization and looking at the growth, I hear an awful lot about Highbury, especially Highbury going south to St. Thomas. We spend a lot of time focusing on, that regional partnership and the growth that we're going to see in St. Thomas. So I have to admit, I'm a bit frustrated that, I'll give you an example. The Hamilton Highbury, that project, I remember going to the initial public discussion in 2014. 10 years on, we're still talking about it, and it's being pushed to 2029. I understand the realities of things happen, we have to move projects, but I think we are getting to the point where prioritization needs to happen for this area. And that is why I'm strongly advocating for this, because I am trying to anticipate the future growth, which I inevitably see happening, which is high volumes of traffic coming from our regional municipalities. You've got St. Thomas, Dorchester. There are areas that will be feeding into the east that are seeing substantial growth, and we need to be planning for them now. So I am trying my best in terms of coming up with solutions to address these things before they reach a breaking point, because I see where this growth is going to come from. And I'm trying to do my due diligence. I'm trying to inform my colleagues there's going to be substantial growth coming from these areas, and we really need to address the traffic concerns now. Do we want Hamilton to be that express lane? Do we want it to be reduced in more of the business district, which the BIA might want to have feedback on that? I think we need to have these discussions desperately now with the community. What do we envision Hamilton Road looking like? I'm fine if colleagues want to take out my explicit mention of the 3 lanes, that's fine, because really I want this to be an opportunity for everyone to give input as to what they want to see for Hamilton Road. Because my primary concern at the end of the day is the safety of our citizens, and that's what's been driving this all along. I really do take it personally whenever there's a death on that road. It is something that I hear about, I feel it, I talk to the members of the community. It's a real concern that I am trying to express with this motion in terms of looking at what could be done to ensure that people aren't injured, people aren't killed. We really need to look at this road in a serious way, and that is what is driving my intention behind this. I think there will be growth. As to Councillor Frank's point, Oxford Wonderland, yes, we're seeing substantial growth in the Northwest, but I don't think that we should ignore a main artery of the East, such as this. I think we have to give it serious consideration. And again, we need to do this work now, because I don't want to be in this position when Hamilton and Highbury, that major infrastructure project comes up in 2029, and we're in a position where we say, well, damn, we should have done the work years ago, and now we're in a position where you're going to have substantial traffic feeding off of Highbury, and the roads cannot handle that volume, and they're not designed properly. So I think we need to do the work now. I'm happy if my colleagues have friendly amendments that they think will make this more amenable, but I really do think we have to look at this now before these other projects get off the ground.
Thank you, Councillor. So I heard from you that you're open to amendments and maybe excluding the portion that says including but not limited to a 3-lane configured road layout and protected bike lanes and accessible sidewalks, removing that. Just some thoughts, committee members? Councillor Trussell.
Just thinking out loud here, what if instead of saying including but not limited to, we say which could include? That way we're not mandating anything, but we're getting the idea across. And we're not taking away any of the richness of the counselor's thoughts about what this could include. And I'll make that as a motion, that we remove the words including but not limited to and substitute which could include.
Councillor Trousseau, you are the mover, so you just want to amend it to say which can include.
Yes.
Is your amendment?
Yes.
Sorry, which could
Could.
include. 3-lane reconfigured road layout, etc. So I'm looking for a seconder for that amendment. Councillor Frank? Questions, comments? Councillor Frank?
Thank you, yes. I'm more comfortable supporting this now because we're not restricting what the outcome would be in regards to the layout. I do understand the caution from staff about putting the cart before the horse, but I do feel now, and I think I will feel in the future, that Hamilton Road is a bit of a gong show. And so I do think that this needs to be reviewed. So I am not too nervous about making sure it is in the top 5, at least for me, priority. So I don't mind supporting it at this point because I think either way, I will likely support evaluating this one for redesign recommendations, given the amount of pedestrian and cyclist injuries and fatalities we've had on this section.
Councillor Ferreira?
Thank you, Chair. The way language is now, it doesn't constrain us, I guess, and it doesn't preclude us for anything, so I like the way it is looking at the moment. I do want to say I like the councillor's work on this. I like the councillor's vigor as he was speaking to the issues of the street. He's very well aware. I also want to look at staff too, and thank you for your work on this too. You know, what I'm hearing from the councillor is, you know, there's a concern and a move to, you know, protect the community of the future along that stretch of Hamilton Road. I frequent that stretch myself as a commuter. I have friends who live on the road, businesses that I go to, that I visit. Sometimes I use that road to get the mulch that the city provides to London residents. It's right off of that road as well. So I'm very aware of the traffic that we have there. I see this as a vote of confidence for the future of the people who commute on that street, the people who live on the street, the people who work on that stretch of road. So I will support this with this, the way the amendment is written. And thanks to the council on this, and I appreciate the discussion that we had here.
Thank you for those comments. If committee will allow me to make a comment from the chair. I want to thank the councillor for the work that you do in your community. I must admit, when I first read this, I was a little concerned that we would be presupposing the mobility master plan. And then I heard a comment here this morning going, well, we can be bringing further projects. And I really don't think that is what this motion is about. It is about doing a study for this area, given the many challenges that are going on, and looking into the future. We know studies, and it takes time, and we need money to do these things. And I do not see this really interfering in any way the mobility master plan at all. We can proceed with this study. And given the challenges in this area, and I know most of us that drive through this area, we can see the challenges on the road. So I will be supporting the motion going forward. Any other comments? Mayor Morgan.
So I appreciate colleagues listening to some of the concerns I raised. And so I'll say at this point, I'm still not willing to support the current motion, but I am willing to have a conversation with the ward councillor leading up to council. I would say based on, you know, what Ms. Chair said about the context of how the mass mobility plan works, you know, a motion that would have been brought along the lines of be requested to consider the need for a corridor study as part of the process, which is what staff actually does. There's going to be probably a number of corridor studies that need to be suggested across the city. It's not just the south that has pressures. There's a number of areas outside the city that are having population growth pressures that are going to put pressure on corridors within the municipal boundaries. And how those are prioritized, I don't know the right answer to that yet, right? So if we just want staff to consider this, which I would presume they actually are in a number of areas of the city, is this the right place for a corridor study? I think that is already part of the mass mobility plan, and if someone wanted to make that just clear, that's probably something that I would be much closer to supporting. But I still think we started at a point where we got into presupposing some of the pieces of this, which I think is just one step down the road. Again, I certainly understand councillors advocating for their parts of the city, raising concerns, working with our staff, trying to ensure that things are identified in major planning processes as things that should be on the radar. And Councillor McAllister's done that today. And it doesn't preclude my future support for things in this area that might alleviate the situation, but I'm still not ready to get ahead of the processes was defined by our staff in the way that they're contemplating things. And I'm not convinced that this isn't already something that they're thinking about in the master mobility plan process in the context of all the other possible corridor studies that might need to be done. So again, I'm happy to think about it between now and council. We've got a bit of time. Happy to have conversations with the ward councillor. At this point at committee, my vote won't be there, but I certainly appreciate the committee at least recognizing the concerns that I've raised initially here with presupposing some of the other important priorities through the mass mobility plan, which I don't know what they are yet, but there's a lot that we need to do in the city from a transportation perspective. Setting a 25 to 30-year plan is a big project, and there's going to be a whole bunch of components of that comes out of that many of us will not be aware of at this point because there's so much public engagement, technical analysis, and work that is done to lead into this process that I don't like getting ahead of those complex technical processes.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan, for those comments and for being here this morning with us. And with that, any other comments? I see none. We can proceed. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just want to end off this conversation. I do appreciate, honestly, I wanted to get this out there, to have this discussion. I know we'll have a more thorough discussion at council as well. But to some of the points I've been hearing in terms of the prioritization, I really do think one of our roles as councillors is bringing these concerns forward, right? So I am completely open to hearing from my other colleagues, and Councillor Frank referenced that one case with Councillor Lehman and Rahman, where they, I don't think any of us would deny Oxford and Wonderland as being a major choke point in terms of traffic. But I do want to hear from my colleagues. So please, if you do have those traffic concerns, you have those roads where you're seeing a lot of issues, we don't have insight into all of our inboxes, right? We drive on these roads, we see it for ourselves, but this was my attempt to bring forward what I hear very frequently. There is literally not a day goes by that someone doesn't talk to me about speeding on Hamilton Road. It is a topic of great concern. I'm more than willing to have other motions come forward from my colleagues if they have problem roads in their area. But I do think as we're having this discussion, especially with the Mobility Master Plan, this is the appropriate time to bring these concerns up. I do understand staff will do their good work. They'll come back in terms of where they see issues, but from our point of view, I think we do have to call out these roads when we see issues occurring. So again, I thank you all for the discussion. I thank staff in terms of the discussions we were able to have leading into this, and I look forward to seeing what my colleagues have to say at council. Thank you.
Thank you. And to committee members, we do have to vote on the amendment, which is in front of us, which reads the motion to amend the motion to remove including, but not limited to, from Part A of the main motion and changing the wording to, which could include. So with that, we can proceed to vote.
Quick question. If we are both the mover and the seconder of the original, could we not just do a friendly amendment without having to vote on it? I guess we already have the vote pulled up, but I thought that would just do it. never mind, we'll just vote.
It is an amendment, so we'll proceed.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
And now we're looking for a motion to approve the motion as amended. Councillor Ferreira? And Councillor Frank seconding it. The motion is in front of us. Can proceed to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-1.
Moving on to deferred matters and additional business. If the committee members will allow me, I do have an additional business item. It's a question to staff. As we know, there's a number of planning applications in our downtown area. And here at Civic Works, there are a number of infrastructure projects and studies that we have approved. And I would like to go to staff with an update on improvements and infrastructure projects on York Street.
Thank you. Through the chair. So yes, we are continuing to do quite a bit of work in the downtown that supports development and infill intensification in our downtown area. So this includes the current work being done on York Street, which includes capacities, sanitary sewer capacities for significantly higher densities than we've seen in the past. One of the key projects that is underway, and the consultant appointment came to this committee not too long ago, is the design work for the sanitary siphon underneath the forks of the Thames. So this is a critical bottleneck location for sanitary flows in the downtown and getting them to Greenway Wastewater Treatment Plant. So design work is underway. So this was a project that we already had planned as a life cycle project because the existing pipe is at the end of its life. So this is important because this project is not waiting on the 2028 DC study. This was already planned and is funded through the multi-year budget. Because we're doing this work already, as we're transitioning or working through this project, we've seen the bigger priority for the infill and so on in the downtown. So we expanded the scope of the work to include increasing the capacity significantly. So this bottleneck will allow us, it's estimated at over 17,000 units that would be tributary to it, while ensuring we're not increasing overflows to the Thames River. That's the other critical point here. So right now, as we've been doing all the upgrade work through the rest of downtown in conjunction with rapid transit, we often have capacity in the sewer in front of the site, but not always to get it across the river. And we want to be very mindful that we're getting the additional flows across the river to the treatment plant and not just having it going into the river when it rains, obviously. So that's what we're working on right now. That is slated for construction in 2025, and it is a high priority project for us to keep moving forwards. So that will be really the key thing in removing a lot of the holding provisions and so on these sites as they come in through the downtown.
Thank you very much for the update, and I look to committee members for adjournment. I am looking for adjournment. Oh. So the question, it's additional business. A question was made to staff. I'll go to committee members. If you want to ask questions, it will be up to the committee to decide on that. Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Chair. Am I able as well to also make comments and questions on the same topic for that additional business?
It's really up to the committee members to make that decision. I'm not getting a response. Maybe you can follow up with staff after, Councillor Ferreira.
Okay, thanks.
And with that, I am looking for adjournment. Councillor Frank and Councillor Farrer. Hand vote? It's carried. Thank you.